Yeptuna nahutukan kakalususultit gentinemi nukupanwan. So it has been such a long time since I made a video, and I strongly apologize for not delivering my promise. As I was working on Rick's Stride episode, a series of events has caused me to delay it even further. Because of my job in college, I had dedicated my remaining time to prepare for my final exams. As I was preparing for my finals, the JVlog community has announced a D.W. Jackson contest. With that, I have delayed the video even further so I can finish and read and finish this book, which is Inexperienced Mage by D.W. Jackson from the Reawakening saga. While this channel is strictly for Native American education, I made an exception since this is an entry for the contest. And while it is a review, I will cover European and Native American culture as well. I also need to mention that there will be small spoilers in this review. I will add a note to skip the major ones if you're interested in reading the book yourselves. I must say I was skeptical about the book Inexperienced Mage. Because of the cover art, I thought it was going to be one of those boring fictional novels you see in the book section of Walmart and Walgreens. But much to my surprise, I actually like this book. The story is about a young lad by the name of Mark living in a matriarchal society. Matriarchies were found in some Native American societies like the Hopi or Iroquois. There are still matriarchal cultures like the Mohawk during the Oka crisis where women took command.
Band councilors are voted in by band members in much the same way as mayors and city councilors are elected in municipal elections. Under the longhouse or traditional system, power is held by clan mothers. Theirs is a hereditary position. There are no elections. By tradition, everything they do is by consensus.
Then something remarkable. Mohawk women assumed command and cleared their men.
You get back, stay back. Kick your Get him out of here!
Matriarchies were extremely rare in European culture. I can only find one example of a matriarchal society in Europe. During the Roman Empire, Tacitus noted that in the nations of Citones, a woman is the ruling sex. There is not much information on matriarchies in Europe. There are examples of Neolithic Europe having matriarchal traits, but not much else. In Inexperienced Mage, they perfectly explain how they became a matriarchy. The Fey Wars were going on for about a century after Emperor Tremon died. He had a lot of heirs take the throne, and eventually everybody started fighting over the throne in a civil war, until the Empire collapsed. Lady Farland talked about creating her own nation and queendom was established. However, in consequence, men started losing their property and eventually their rights, and some became slaves. Mark was a slave that was extremely educated and skilled in combat who was being sold to a queen. While he was in the carriage being exported, the group he was with was attacked and he took that opportunity to escape into the woods. The slavery system in the book is a bit weird. Usually when people speak of slaves, you think of people who live in horrible conditions, denied education, or have no rights, etc. Which is true in some slavery systems, but not all. The Aztec Empire had a very interesting type of slavery. They did not randomly enslave their own people, but rather enslave those who commit a crime or enslave war captives. Within the empire, slaves had rights and were still required to have an education. While slaves can choose to buy their own freedom, it was common for them to choose not to, since most of them were living comfortably and they cannot be sold without their consent. However, this does not mean that slavery in the Aztec Empire was all good. In rare cases, slaves were to be sacrificed, but it all depends on the conditions. Contrast to Europe, in the Roman Empire, slaves had absolutely no rights. Based on the setting of the book, it looks like it takes place around the early Middle Ages, despite having access to chocolate and tomatoes, which I will cover later in this video. I'm also aware that the story takes place in a fantasy Earth, but I still want to make comparisons into our real-life history. Slavery in Western Europe was already in decline during the Middle Ages, but they did have serfdom. A serf was somebody who worked the land of their lords. Though they're not technically slaves, they did not live the best conditions and oftentimes were expendable. There was also a class system within serfs, including slaves. Slavery system in Inexperienced Mage is very different from that of the real-life counterparts. In real life, the only slavery system that had slaves receive an education, as far as I know, was the Aztec slavery system. In this book, you had different ranks. A, B were the upper ranks produced by the academy, while C and D were the lower ranks. A ranks were at the top and they had better living conditions, elite training, education, etc. I can't think of any real-life counterpart that mirrors this. From what I understand from the book, males had little to no rights. I need to read the other books in the series in order to understand what rights males had, if any. Back to the story. After Mark made his escape, he stumbled upon an abandoned tower where he discovered the books of magic after falling into a hidden room. He read the books and gained some knowledge on how to utilize magic. It was fascinating to see how Mark was able to learn magic and the limitations that came with it. After leaving the tower, he came across a farm where he was taken in by a nice old lady named Joanne. While he was living with Joanne and her family, he grew fond of them. Eventually, he was caught practicing magic. Luckily, the family did not judge Mark for practicing magic. The reason why Mark was hiding the fact he knew magic is because magic no longer existed. During the reign of Emperor Tremon, mages were persecuted and any item of magic was to be destroyed. This means that Mark may be the only person alive to know magic. Instead of fear, Joanne's family were interested, including Claire, Mark's love interest. Unfortunately, Mark could not stay and had to leave to the capital, making everybody in Joanne's family sad, especially Claire. During his travel, he met Monique, who was a merchant. He revealed to her that he knew magic and they both formed a deal in selling magical items. It was surprising to see that she did not discriminate him for being a male and practicing magic. I would imagine he is in the most unenviable position to be in that era. Someone like him who would have been in constant danger if he were to be found out. His stay at the capital was the most interesting part of the book, but I have a few criticisms which I will cover near the end of this video. The book is obviously written by a male, a 16-year-old dating a grown attractive merchant and sharing a bed with a female warrior, something that all boys dream of. There was also a mention of chocolate and tomatoes. In real life, tomatoes and chocolate could only be acquired from the New World. My question is there a parallel Mesoamerica within the series? If there is not, then I strongly suggest it to be included, since it will definitely make the story a lot more interesting. I also love the fact that there are severe limitations in using magic. He does not have infinite power, and using magic causes fatigue. He could also die if he pushes himself way too much. Magical items have a limited amount of use before they need to be recharged. These small details are extremely important, and I'm glad that the author covered this. While he was in the capital, he learned a spell that enables him to disguise himself as a woman to protect himself from discrimination, since men were considered to be lower class citizens. While I found the book to be entertaining for the most part, the best parts are near the end. I won't mention the last part of the book since there are major spoilers, and while they are a bit cliche, they're also very unexpected. I do have a few criticisms about this book. The first one is Mark and Maria. I found their relationship very disturbing. Mark is 16 and Maria is barely 11. While they are not dating, the fact that Mark blushed when Maria kissed him made me cringe in disgust. That is very creepy. A high schooler should not be attracted to someone who is still in elementary school. I also have a bit of a problem with the cover art. It is not horrible by any means, but I think it should be a bit more creative in order to attract readers. For example, Animorphs had this flip page corner where you can see the characters transform. A huge pet peeve is the third person perspective. The third person perspective seems pointless since the story only follows the protagonist and not the other characters. As far as suggestions go, I do have one major suggestion which I have mentioned before, and that is to add a Mesoamerican-like world. With the tomatoes and chocolate, adding a kingdom similar to the Aztecs or Zapotecs would definitely be an interesting read. I have so many ideas I want to share, but I don't have enough time. And that's the end of my video. Now, if you guys are interested in learning Japanese or Japanese culture, click on the notation up here, or on the link down below to My English. My English is somebody who teaches Japanese to English speakers as well as English to Japanese speakers. Inexperienced Mage is just the beginning of the series. If you're interested in this book or any other works, click on the link down below or type in the address you see here if you happen to be viewing this video outside of YouTube. His Amazon page has all the books you want to see if you love fantasy novels. How can you say no to this sexy man? Order now! Miaotel, Shewatel, Padiush.